Naledi Jenkins never expected falling asleep in the wrong bed would awaken the most feared man in Seoul, or that it would make her the target of every enemy who wanted him dead. In the shadows of Gangnam's underground empire, Kim Dong-hyun sat paralyzed in his wheelchair, a ghost of the ruthless king who once controlled Seoul's night. His body hadn't responded to anything in 15 years, not pleasure, not pain, not hope, until the night his new maid, exhausted from double shifts, collapsed into his bed by mistake. Her warmth beside him sparked something doctors said was impossible, a physical stirring he thought he'd lost forever. She didn't know he was paralyzed from a rival's ambush that killed his wife. She didn't know his enemies watched for any sign of weakness. She didn't know that her presence just made him vulnerable in ways that could get them both killed. But when her chocolate skin pressed against his sheets and her full curves molded into his mattress, something inside the Mafia king cracked open, and the underworld took notice. Welcome to Love and Tension. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get dangerously personal, and the power flip at the end will leave you speechless. 3 weeks before that fateful night, the wheelchair gleamed under fluorescent lights, chrome, expensive, a prison Kim Dong-hyun couldn't escape. He sat in his penthouse office overlooking the Han River, fingers drumming the armrest, the only part of his body that still obeyed. 15 years since the bullet severed his spine. 15 years since he'd felt anything below his waist. 15 years since his wife died in that same ambush, bleeding out in his useless arms. The doctor said he'd never walk again. They were right. They also said other things would never work. They were right about that, too. Boss Taeyang, his head of security, entered without knocking. Only he had that privilege. The new maid starts today. Another one? Dong-hyun's voice carried the weight of someone who'd stopped caring about small things. The last 3 quit within a week. This one's different. American, desperate enough to ignore the rumors. What rumors? Taeyang's silence said everything. The whispers that Kim Dong-hyun was cruel, impossible, that working for him meant entering hell. Good. The fear kept people at a distance. Distance kept him safe from the weakness of attachment. Send her up. Naledi Jenkins stared at the eviction notice taped to her apartment door. 72 hours. That's all she had left. Her phone buzzed. Another collection call. She silenced it, hands shaking. 2 jobs weren't enough. Not after her ex, Devin, had drained their joint account and disappeared. Not after she'd spent everything trying to help her sick mother before she died. Not after... Stop. Don't go there. She unlocked her door and slid inside, leaning against it. The apartment was already half-packed, boxes everywhere, memories scattered across cardboard. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, the job posting still glowing on screen. Live-in housekeeper needed. Seoul, South Korea private employer. Room and board included. A salary. $4,000 per month. Immediate start. Discretion required. $4,000. In Atlanta, that barely covered rent. In Seoul, that could change everything. Let her start over, escape the wreckage Devin left behind, the bruises that had finally healed, the shame that hadn't. The posting mentioned nothing about the employer except one line. Experience with difficult personalities preferred. Naledi knew difficult. She'd survived worse. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The application asked for basic information. Name, age, experience. Nothing invasive. The email response came within an hour. Interview via video call tomorrow, 8 p.m. your time. Be punctual. This is your only opportunity. The interview was strange. 3 Korean men in expensive suits sat in what looked like a boardroom. No smiles, no warmth. They asked questions in clipped English. You understand this position requires living on site? Yes. You understand discretion is non-negotiable? Yes. You understand our employer values privacy above all else? I can respect that. The man in the center, sharp jaw, calculating eyes, leaned forward. Why do you want this job, Miss Jenkins? The truth sat on her tongue. Because I'm broke, desperate, and running from a man who put me in the hospital twice. But she knew desperation smelled like blood and water. These men were sharks. I want a fresh start, she said carefully. Somewhere my past doesn't follow me. I'm a hard worker, I don't ask questions, and I can handle difficult. How difficult? She met his gaze. I grew up in foster care after my mama couldn't take care of me anymore. Worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. Survived an abusive relationship that nearly killed me. I'd say I can handle most things. The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. You'll be working for someone who doesn't like people, who doesn't want conversation or friendship, just competence. Can you provide that? Yes. When can you start? Give me 3 days to settle my affairs. You have 2. Someone will send your plane ticket. The screen went black. The flight was long. Naledi arrived in Seoul exhausted, disoriented, overwhelmed by the Hangul signs she couldn't read, the rapid-fire Korean she couldn't understand. A driver met her at the airport, silent, professional, holding a sign with her name. He drove her through Seoul's glittering streets, at the city alive with neon and noise until they reached Gangnam. The buildings here were different, sleeker, more expensive. They pulled into an underground garage of a building that looked like it cost more than her entire neighborhood back home. The penthouse elevator required a key card. The driver handed her one. Your room is on the 2nd floor. Mr. Kim's quarters are on the 3rd. You don't go to the 3rd floor unless called. Understood? Understood. The elevator opened to luxury that made her breath catch. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that probably cost more than her car. Her room was simple but comfortable. Private bathroom, a bed that felt like clouds. She unpacked quickly, changed into the uniform left on her bed. Simple black dress, crisp white apron. A note sat on the dresser. Mr. Kim takes breakfast at 7 a.m., lunch at 1 p.m., dinner at 7 p.m. He doesn't eat in his room. Meals are served in the dining room on the 3rd floor. You will clean, cook, and stay out of his way. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not ask questions about his condition. Do not touch him without permission. Violate these rules and you're on the next flight home. Naledi read it twice. His condition. What did that mean? She met Kim Dong-hyun the next morning. She'd prepared breakfast, simple, following the menu left in the kitchen. Rice, soup, banchan. She carried the tray to the 3rd floor, knocked on the dining room door. Enter. The voice was cold, commanding. She pushed the door open and saw him. The wheelchair struck her first. Chrome and leather, expensive. It was built for someone who'd be in it forever. Then, the man himself. Sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, shoulders broad despite his condition. He wore a black shirt, perfectly pressed. His hair was dark, touched with gray at the temples. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous. You're the new maid, not a question. Yes, sir. Naledi Jenkins. I didn't ask your name. She set the tray down, careful to stay professional despite the sting. Will there be anything else? His eyes traveled over her, not sexual, just assessing, taking inventory. She knew what he saw, a black woman, curvy, obviously American, obviously out of place in his pristine Korean world. You're dismissed. She left without another word. The routine was brutal. Dong-hyun was exacting, impossible. Fluent he wanted things done a specific way and grew cold when they weren't perfect. He never raised his voice. That would require caring. But his silence was worse. It made her feel like she was failing at something she couldn't quite name. She learned quickly. He took his coffee black. Exactly 185 degrees. His sheets had to be changed daily, the hospital corners precise. His meals required specific portions, specific arrangements. He never thanked her, never acknowledged her beyond the occasional command. But she noticed things. The way his jaw tightened when he struggled to reach something just out of range. The medication bottles in his bathroom. Pain management, muscle relaxers, something she didn't recognize. The physical therapy equipment in a locked room she wasn't supposed to enter, but had seen through the cracked door. The scars on his lower back, visible once when she'd entered his room to change sheets and he hadn't heard her knock. He wasn't just in a wheelchair. He was in pain. Constant, grinding pain he never mentioned. On day 5, she made a mistake. She'd been exhausted, working double time to clean the massive penthouse, learning to cook Korean food from YouTube videos at night, adjusting to the time difference. She'd finished his dinner service, cleaned the kitchen, and collapsed on the sofa in the staff lounge. She didn't mean to fall asleep. She woke hours later, disoriented. It was past midnight. She stood quickly, straightening her uniform, and went to check if Dong-hyun needed anything before bed. His bedroom door was open. The lights were off. She could see the outline of his wheelchair beside the bed, the silhouette of him in it, unslumped forward. He'd fallen asleep without transferring to the bed. Naledi hesitated. The rules said don't touch him, but leaving him like that seemed cruel. His neck was bent at an angle that would leave him in agony by morning. She approached quietly. Mr. Kim? No response. She touched his shoulder gently. He jerked awake, eyes wild with something that looked like fear before his expression shuddered. What are you doing here? You fell asleep in your chair. I thought... You thought wrong. His voice was ice. Get out. I was just trying to help. I don't need your help. I don't need your pity. Get out. She left quickly, cheeks burning with humiliation. Naledi learned to avoid Dong-hyun outside of required interactions. She did her job, stayed invisible, counted down the days until her first paycheck. But on day 7, everything changed. She'd worked late again, cleaning his study while he was in his physical therapy session with the private trainer who came 3 times a week. She'd scrubbed floors, dusted shelves, reorganized his extensive library of books he never seemed to touch. Exhaustion hit her like a wave. She needed just a moment, just 5 minutes to rest her eyes. Dong-hyun's bedroom was closer than her own. The door was open. His bed was freshly made. She'd changed the sheets that morning. Just 5 minutes. She lay down on top of the covers, careful not to disturb anything. The bed was softer than hers. The pillows smelled like expensive detergent and something else. Something masculine. 5 minutes, she told herself. She fell asleep instantly. Dong-hyun finished therapy in agony. His legs screamed with phantom pains they shouldn't feel. His back burned where the scar tissue pulled tight. The therapist had pushed hard today, working muscles that barely responded, trying to maintain what little function remained. He wheeled himself to his bedroom, wanting only to collapse and let the pain medication drag him under. He stopped in the doorway. Someone was in his bed. The maid, Naledi, asleep on top of his covers, still in her uniform, her face soft with exhaustion. Her dark skin contrasted against his white sheets. Her curly hair had escaped its bun, spreading across his pillow. Her body, full curves, soft edges, took up space in a way that felt foreign in his sterile world. He should wake her, fire her, have security throw her out, but he didn't. Something about seeing her there, vulnerable, trusting, and utterly at ease in a space he'd claimed as his fortress, made him hesitate, and then he felt it. A stirring, low in his abdomen, pressure, heat, sensation he hadn't experienced in 15 years, flooding back like electricity through dead wires. His breath caught. Impossible. The doctors had been clear. The damage was permanent. Nerve death was nerve death. He'd accepted that truth years ago, grieved it, moved on. But his body was responding, actually responding. To the sight of this woman in his bed, her warmth radiating across his sheets, her presence disrupting the carefully controlled emptiness he'd built. Dong-hyun stared at her, mind racing. This wasn't medical, wasn't logical, but it was happening. He wheeled closer. The sensation intensified. His heart hammered. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. He needed her out, needed to maintain distance, control, safety. But if she left, would the sensation disappear? Would he lose this impossible gift as quickly as it arrived? The question paralyzed him worse than the bullet ever had. Naledi woke to someone watching her. Her eyes snapped open. Dong-hyun sat in his wheelchair beside the bed, expression unreadable in the dim light. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, sitting up quickly. "I was cleaning and I just needed a minute and I—" "Stop talking." She closed her mouth, bracing for the termination she knew was coming. "How long have you been working without proper rest?" The question surprised her. Every day. But that's my job. Your job is to maintain this household. You can't do that if you collapse from exhaustion." His voice was still cold, but something underneath it had shifted. "From now on, you have 2 hours of break time in the afternoon. Use my bed if yours is too far." She blinked. "I don't understand." "You don't need to understand. Just follow the instruction." He wheeled himself toward the door, then paused. "And Naledi?" It was the first time he'd used her name. "Yes? You're not fired." He left. Naledi sat in his bed, heart pounding, completely confused about what just happened. What she didn't know was that Kim Dong-hyun had just felt something he thought was dead forever, and he'd do anything to feel it again. The next afternoon, Naledi found a note in the kitchen. "Take your break at 2 p.m. third-floor bedroom. Door will be unlocked." She stared at it, confused. Yesterday he'd been furious she'd fallen asleep in his bed. Today he was inviting her back? At 2 p.m. she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The bedroom door stood open. Dong-hyun was nowhere in sight. He was in his study. She could hear him on a phone call in Korean, voice sharp with authority. She entered his bedroom cautiously. The bed was made perfectly, just as she'd left it. She lay down on top of the covers again, careful not to disturb anything. Sleep came quickly. The exhaustion of learning a new job, a new city, a new language. It all caught up with her at once. She didn't hear Dong-hyun wheel himself to the doorway 20 minutes later. He stayed there, watching her sleep, feeling that impossible, stirring return. Stronger this time, more insistent. 15 years of nothing, and now this. He needed to understand why. Needed to test if it was real or some phantom sensation his desperate brain had invented. But testing meant proximity, meant risk, meant allowing someone close enough to destroy him. The underworld didn't forgive weakness. His enemies circled constantly, waiting for any sign that Kim Dong-hyun's reign was ending. If they knew about this, about her, they'd use her to tear him apart. But God, the sensation, the feeling of being alive again, he couldn't let it go. They fell into a routine. Every afternoon at 2 p.m., Naledi took her break in his bed. Dong-hyun made sure to be in his study or elsewhere, giving her privacy, but he always found a reason to wheel past his bedroom doorway. Always checked to confirm she was there, and every time he saw her sleeping in his space, his body responded. It became an addiction, a dangerous one. On day 10, she woke before her alarm and found him in the doorway. Their eyes met. "You're watching me sleep," she said quietly. Not accusatory, just observational. "You're in my bed," he replied. "Where else should I look?" She sat up slowly, smoothing her uniform. "Why do you let me do this? You could have fired me that first night." Dong-hyun was silent for a long moment. Then, "Do you know what happened to me? I know you're in a wheelchair. I know it's permanent. That's all anyone told me. 15 years ago, a rival family ambushed my car. I survived. My wife didn't." His voice was flat, reciting facts. "The bullet severed my spine at T12. Everything below stopped working. Sensation, movement, everything." Naledi waited, sensing there was more. "The doctor said I'd live, but I wouldn't live. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes," she whispered. "I think I do. When I see you in my bed." He stopped, jaw tight. "Something responds. Something I thought was dead." She processed this slowly. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that for 15 years I've felt nothing. But when you're near, I feel something." He met her eyes. "I don't understand it, but I need it." The vulnerability in those words hung between them. Naledi realized she was seeing something no one else saw, the man beneath the Mafia king, scared and desperate and very, very human. "Is that why you want me to keep sleeping here?" she asked softly. Yes. She should have felt used, objectified. Instead, she felt something else, something complicated. "What happens if this stops working? If the sensation goes away? Then you go back to being just the maid. And if it doesn't?" Dong-hyun's dark eyes held hers. "Then we'll figure out what comes next." The afternoon naps became more than rest for Naledi. They became the strangest intimacy she'd ever experienced, lying in a man's bed while he watched from the doorway, both of them caught in something neither understood. But the nights were different. She started noticing sounds from the 3rd floor, groans of pain, the whir of the wheelchair at 3 a.m. Once, she heard something crash and went upstairs without thinking. Dong-hyun was on the floor beside his bed, trying to lever himself back into his wheelchair. "Don't!" he snapped when she rushed forward. "I can do it myself. You've been down there for 20 minutes. I heard you fall, and I can get back up. I know you don't need help, but you have it anyway." She moved to his side, offering her arm. "Use me as leverage. I'm stronger than I look." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he gripped her arm. She braced herself, and together they got him back into his chair. He was breathing hard. So was she. "Thank you," he said finally. The words sounded rusty, unused. "You're welcome." "Naledi?" He caught her wrist before she could leave. His grip was warm, certain. "What happened in Atlanta? Why were you so desperate to leave?" She could have lied, deflected, but something about the darkness of 3 a.m. made the truth easier. "I was with someone who hurt me. Multiple times. The last time he put me in the hospital. I left, but he wouldn't stop. Showing up at my job, my apartment, calling and texting until I had to change my number. I couldn't afford to move, couldn't afford to run, until your job posting appeared." Dong-hyun's expression went cold. "His name." "What?" "The man who hurt you. His name." "Why does it matter?" "Because if he follows you here, I need to know who to kill." The words should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something warm unfold in her chest, protected, maybe for the first time in years. "Devin Wright, but he doesn't know I left the country. No one does except my old landlord." "Devin Wright," Dong-hyun repeated, committing it to memory. "If he contacts you, you tell me immediately. Understood?" "Yes." "And Naledi?" His grip on her wrist tightened slightly. "You're not going back to that. Not ever. While you're under my roof, no one touches you without your permission. Including me." "Including you," she echoed. Their eyes held in the darkness. "Go back to bed," he said finally. "You need sleep." She left, but sleep didn't come easy. Her wrist still felt warm where he'd held it. Dong-hyun called Tae-yang to his study. "I need information on someone. Devin Wright, Atlanta, Georgia. Connects to Naledi Jenkins, our current housekeeper." Tae-yang's eyebrows rose. "Why?" "He's a threat to my household. Find out everything. Where he lives, where he works, who he knows, and make sure he's not looking for her." "Boss, is this wise? Getting involved in—" "Did I ask for your opinion?" "No, sir." "Then do it." Tae-yang left. Dong-hyun sat in the darkness of his study, hands steepled under his chin. He was crossing lines, blurring boundaries, letting someone matter in ways he'd sworn never to allow again. But he couldn't stop. The sensation when she was near had grown stronger. This morning, when she'd brought his breakfast, Their hands had brushed. The jolt that went through him was electric. He'd actually felt it. Nerve pathways lighting up that should be dead. She was medicine, magic, a miracle wrapped in soft curves and kind eyes, and miracles in his world always came with a price. That afternoon, Naledi fell asleep in his bed as usual. But this time, Dong Hyun didn't watch from the doorway. He wheeled himself inside the bedroom, closer, until he was beside the bed where she slept. She looked peaceful. Her chest rose and fell steadily. One hand curled under her cheek like a child. Slowly, carefully, he reached out. His fingers brushed her arm. The sensation exploded through him. Not just the stirring he'd felt before, but actual feeling in his legs. Pins and needles, warmth, the phantom ghost of what he'd lost. His breath came faster. His heart hammered. She stirred slightly in her sleep, unconsciously leaning into his touch. He pulled back quickly, hands shaking. This wasn't just attraction. It was neurological. Her presence was somehow rewiring his broken nervous system, creating pathways that shouldn't exist. He needed to tell someone. A doctor, a specialist. Someone who could explain why this woman's proximity was giving him back pieces of what the bullet stole. But if he told anyone, they'd take her away, study her, use her, destroy whatever this fragile thing was between them. So he'd keep the secret, even if it killed him. The atmosphere in the penthouse changed. Dong Hyun stopped being cold. He didn't warm exactly. That would be too much. But the ice thawed to something more human. He asked her questions during breakfast, listened to her answers. Once, when she laughed at something on her phone, he asked what was funny. She showed him a meme she didn't think he'd understand, but he'd smiled. Just barely, just for a second. And she'd felt like she'd won something precious. The afternoon naps continued. But now he didn't just watch from the doorway. He'd wheel himself inside, working on his laptop or reading while she slept. His presence somehow made her sleep deeper, safer. She started learning Korean from apps on her phone. Simple phrases at first. Dong Hyun corrected her pronunciation during meals, patient in a way that surprised them both. Tae-yang noticed. "You're different," he said to Dong Hyun one evening. "How?" "Less," he searched for the word, haunted. Dong Hyun said nothing. But Tae-yang was right. For 15 years, he'd been a ghost in his own life. Now, somehow, he was remembering how to be human. It happened on a rainy afternoon. Naledi was in his bed, half asleep, when she felt the mattress dip slightly. She opened her eyes. Dong Hyun had transferred himself from wheelchair to bed. Not lying down, he couldn't do that without help, but sitting on the edge, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Did I wake you?" he asked. "No." She sat up slowly. They were inches apart now, close enough to see the silver threaded through his dark hair. The scar on his temple she'd never asked about. "What are you doing?" "Testing something." "Testing what?" Instead of answering, he reached out and touched her face. His palm cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her jawline. The feeling that shot through him made him close his eyes. "There," he whispered. "You feel that?" "Feel what?" "Everything." He opened his eyes, dark and intense. "When I touch you, I feel everything, not just here." He gestured vaguely at his lower body, but everywhere, like my nerves are waking up after 15 years of sleep. Naledi's breath caught. Is that medically possible?" "No, which is why I can't tell anyone." His hand dropped from her face, but he didn't move away. "You want to know why I really asked you to sleep here? It's not just about the physical response, it's about hope. For 15 years, I've been dead from the waist down. But you make me remember what being alive feels like." Dong Hyun. It was the first time she'd used his given name. "You can leave if this is too much. I'll give you severance, recommendations, anything you need. But I'm asking you to stay. Not as my maid. As..." He stopped, struggling. "As something else. I don't have a word for it yet." She should run. This was insane. Impossible. A Korean mafia king in a wheelchair, dependent on her presence for sensation he shouldn't have. It was codependent at best, dangerous at worst. But when had Naledi ever chosen safe? "I'll stay," she whispered. "But we need rules." "What kind of rules?" "I'm not your cure. I'm not your miracle. I'm just a woman who happens to make your body respond. Don't put that burden on me." "Fair. And I need to understand your world, the danger, the enemies. All of it. No more secrets." Dong Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That's a dangerous request. I'm already in danger just by being here, aren't I?" "Yes." "Then I deserve to know why." He nodded slowly. "All right, tonight. I'll tell you everything." They sat in his study. Her on the sofa, him in his wheelchair, a bottle of whiskey on the table between them that he didn't touch. "What do you know about organized crime in Seoul?" he asked. "Nothing." "Good. Keep it that way." He paused. "But since you insist on understanding, my family has controlled the underground in Gangnam for 3 generations. Drugs, weapons, protection, information. If it's illegal and profitable, We touch it. Naledi listened, trying not to show her shock. 15 years ago, a rival family tried to take our territory, the Park family. They ambushed my car when my wife was with me. She was pregnant. His voice didn't waver, but his hands tightened on the armrests. The bullet that paralyzed me went through her first. She died at the scene. So did my unborn son. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I destroyed the Park family after that, every last one of them. It took 5 years, but I eliminated every person who had anything to do with that ambush. He met her eyes. I'm not a good man, Naledi. I never was. The wheelchair didn't change that. It just made me more efficient, harder to kill. People underestimate a man in a wheelchair. They shouldn't. Why are you telling me this? Because if you stay, you need to know what you're stepping into. I have enemies. They'd love to find a weakness in me. And you, Naledi Jenkins, are becoming my greatest weakness. The words hung in the air between them. Who are your enemies? She asked quietly. The Shu clan from China, the Kang brothers, a few ambitious lieutenants who think my condition makes me vulnerable. He leaned forward. If they found out about you, about what you do to me, they'd use you, kidnap you to control me, or kill you to hurt me. Then why risk it? Why not just fire me and keep yourself safe? Because I'm selfish. The raw honesty in his voice hit her hard. Because for 15 years I've been half dead, and you make me feel alive. Because I'd rather risk everything than go back to the nothing I had before. Naledi absorbed this. What do you want from me? Stay close, let me keep feeling, and help me figure out if this is temporary, or if you've somehow rewired my nervous system permanently. And if it's temporary, then I'll have had something beautiful for a little while. He wheeled himself closer. Is that enough for you? She thought about Atlanta, about Devon's fists, about running and hiding and always being afraid, about taking this insane job in a foreign country because she had no other choice. Maybe it was time to stop running from danger and start walking toward it on her own terms. It's enough, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. You teach me to protect myself. Your world, your rules, your enemies, I learn all of it. I'm not going to be helpless. Dong-hyun smiled for the second time since she'd met him. Deal. And that retaliation you did against the Park family? If Devon finds me. Yeah, I want the same. His smile widened. Sharp, dangerous, exactly what she needed. Oh, Naledi, for you I'd make it worse. Something in her chest settled. Found home. Then we have a deal, Mr. Kim. Dong-hyun, if you're going to be my weakness, you should use my name. Dong-hyun, she repeated. The syllables felt foreign and intimate on her tongue. Better. He extended his hand. Partners? She shook it. His grip was warm, certain, exactly as strong as hers. Partners. Neither of them knew that decision would save both their lives. Comment bait embedded in Act 1. The reveal of Devon's abuse and Dong-hyun's promise of retaliation is designed to make viewers comment about justice, protection, and whether they've experienced similar situations. The physical awakening element will drive debate about whether it's realistic or romantic. The partners moment creates team picking. Team Dong-hyun or Team Naledi. Naledi's education started at dawn. Taeyang arrived at 5 a.m. with a woman Naledi hadn't met. Small, fierce, Korean, with hands that moved like knives. This is Aaron, Dong-hyun said from his position near the windows. She'll teach you basics, self-defense, threat assessment, how to move in my world without painting a target on your back. Aaron bowed slightly. We start now. For 2 hours every morning, before the rest of the house woke, Naledi learned how to break a hold, where to strike to disable an attacker, how to read a room for exits and weapons, how to walk through Gangnam streets without screaming foreign and vulnerable. It hurt. Her body ached in ways she didn't know possible, but she pushed through. Dong-hyun watched every session from his wheelchair, dark eyes tracking her movements. Once, when she landed a particularly good hit on the practice dummy, he nodded approval. That nod felt better than any praise she'd ever received. The routine continued. 2 p.m., his bed, her sleeping while he worked nearby. But now, sometimes they talked. She told him about growing up in foster care, the good homes and the bad ones, the foster mother who'd taught her to cook and the foster father who'd stolen her savings, the way she'd learned to make herself small, invisible, safe. You're not small anymore, Dong-hyun observed one afternoon. You take up space like you own it. Your bed makes me bold, she said, then blushed. That came out wrong. Did it? His voice carried a thread of something warm, amused. Maybe I like you bold. Their eyes met. The air shifted. Naledi sat up slowly. Dong-hyun, what are we doing? I don't know, he admitted, but I don't want to stop. Neither do I. She moved closer, watching his face for any sign of discomfort. Can I try something? What? This? She reached out and touched his hand, threaded her fingers through his. Does that feel like anything? He closed his eyes. Yes. Where? Everywhere. His hand tightened on hers. It's like every nerve ending is firing at once, like I'm being electrocuted in the best possible way. She moved his hand to her cheek, the way he'd touched her before. And this? Naledi. Her name sounded like a prayer. This is dangerous. I know. If I let myself want you more than I already do, then let yourself want me. She moved closer still until she was kneeling on the bed beside his wheelchair. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this too. Whatever this is. You don't understand what you're offering. Then tell me. Dong-hyun's jaw worked. In my world, attachment is weakness. The woman I love becomes a target. My wife died because of me, because loving me made her vulnerable. I won't do that to you. You're not doing anything to me. I'm choosing this. There's a difference. Is there? She leaned in until their foreheads almost touched. You said I make you feel alive. You do the same for me. Atlanta made me small, scared. You make me brave. I'm not giving that up because it's dangerous. Danger is everywhere, at least here. I'm facing it on my own terms. Dong-hyun's breath hitched. You're sure? I'm sure. Then God help us both. He pulled her closer, surprising strength in his arms, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't testing. It was 15 years of hunger and loneliness and need pouring into one desperate moment. Naledi kissed him back with equal hunger. Her hands found his face, his shoulders, his chest, mapping the warm, alive parts of him that worked, that responded, that wanted. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dong-hyun's eyes were blown black with want. How much do you feel? She whispered. More every day. When you're close, I swear I can feel my legs. It's phantom sensation, impossible, but it's there. Show me. He took her hand and placed it on his thigh. Touch me here. She did. His leg was warm through his slacks, the muscle atrophied, but still present. I can feel that, he said softly, not sharply, not like before. But I feel the pressure, the warmth, you. Dong-hyun, don't tell anyone, please. If the wrong people found out, I won't. I promise. She kissed him again, softer this time. This stays between us. Between us, he echoed. Then, I need you to do something for me. What? Tonight, instead of sleeping in your room, stay here, in my bed, with me. Her heart hammered. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking you to sleep beside me. That's all. I want to see if proximity overnight changes anything. If the sensation gets stronger. Just sleep, unless you want more. The offer hung between them. Let me think about it, Naledi said finally. This is a lot. Take all the time you need. He released her hand reluctantly. But Naledi, yes? Thank you for making me feel human again. Naledi appeared in his doorway at 10 p.m. wearing pajamas, soft pants, and a tank top. Her hair was loose, curly, falling around her shoulders. Dong-hyun was already in bed, propped against pillows. The wheelchair sat nearby. The lights were dim. You came, he said. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it. She climbed into bed beside him, careful not to jostle him. Is this okay? More than okay. They lay side by side, not touching, just breathing the same air. The silence stretched comfortable and strange. Tell me something true, Naledi said finally. About what? About you. Something no one else knows. Dong-hyun was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. And then, I'm terrified every day that I'll wake up and this will be gone, that you'll stop making me feel, that I'll go back to being the dead man in the chair. You were never dead. You were just waiting. For what? For me. She rolled onto her side to face him. I don't think this is random, Dong-hyun. I don't think I'm just some maid who happened to fall asleep in the right bed. I think we were supposed to find each other. I don't believe in fate. Neither did I. But here we are. He reached for her hand in the darkness, found it, held it. Here we are. They fell asleep like that, fingers intertwined, breathing synchronized, two broken people finding something whole in each other. And in the morning, when Dong-hyun woke, he felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. He felt his toes. Or the changes came fast after that. Dong-hyun could feel more, not just phantom sensation, but actual nerve response. When Naledi touched his legs during their physical therapy sessions, she'd convinced him to let her help. He could tell her exactly where her hands were without looking. He started standing. Not for long, not without support, but with the help of parallel bars and Naledi's hands steadying him, he could lock his knees and hold his weight for 30 seconds at a time. The physical therapist was shocked. I don't understand. You've been at Plateau for years. What changed? I changed, Dong-hyun said, meeting Naledi's eyes across the therapy room. At night, she slept in his bed. They didn't have sex. He wasn't ready physically or emotionally, and she respected that. But they learned each other in other ways. The way she liked her back rubbed before sleep, The way he needed her to talk about mundane things when the phantom pain got bad, to distract him from hurting. They learned to be a unit. Taeyang noticed. "You're walking," he said one morning, watching Dong-hyun stand for a full minute at the parallel bars. "I'm trying. Because of her. Because of me," Dong-hyun corrected. "She just gave me a reason." Taeyang's expression was complicated. "Boss, you know I'm loyal. But I have to say this. If your enemies find out about her, they won't. They will. They always do. And when they figure out she's your weakness, then I'll destroy anyone who touches her." Dong-hyun's voice went cold. "Make sure our security knows she's under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally." "Understood." But Taeyang left looking worried. Because in their world, protection wasn't enough. Love was a death sentence. It came in the form of flowers. Naledi found them outside her bedroom door one morning. Black roses, expensive, with a note in English. Beautiful things break so easily, especially when they don't belong. She brought them to Dong-hyun immediately. His face went dark. "Who delivered these?" "I don't know. They were just there when I woke up." He called Taeyang. "Review every camera feed from last night. Someone got into this building and left a threat. Find them." Taeyang paled. "Boss, our security is not good enough. Find them, now." After Taeyang left, Dong-hyun looked at Naledi. "Pack a bag. You're moving to the 3rd floor. My bedroom. Permanently. Why? Because if someone got this close once, they'll do it again, and I won't risk you." "Dong-hyun, I can't live in your room. You already sleep there every night. This just makes it official." He took her hand. "I know this is fast. I know this is insane. But please, let me keep you safe." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could take care of herself, but the black roses in her hand made her pause, because whoever sent them knew exactly where she slept, knew enough to leave them outside her door without triggering any alarms. That was professional. Dangerous. "Okay," she said finally, "but you're teaching me to shoot. Deal." They went to Dong-hyun's private range in the basement, a room Naledi hadn't known existed, soundproofed and armed with enough weapons to supply a small army. "This is my world," Dong-hyun said, showing her how to hold a Glock 19. "Welcome to it," she learned fast. The weight of the gun, the kick, the way to breathe and squeeze rather than pull the trigger. By the end of 2 hours, she could hit center mass at 15 yards. "Good," Dong-hyun said, watching her empty a magazine. "But not good enough. In a real situation, you need to aim here." He pointed to his head. "And here." His heart. "Anywhere else, they might survive long enough to hurt you. You're teaching me to kill. I'm teaching you to survive. There's a difference." Naledi ejected the magazine, checked the chamber like he'd taught her. "Who do you think sent the flowers?" "I have suspicions." "Tell me." He hesitated. Then, "There's a faction in my organization that thinks I'm weak, that my condition makes me unfit to lead. They've been quiet for years, but lately there's been noise. Small rebellions, territory disputes, someone testing my limits. And they think I'm the limit? They think you're my weakness. And they're not wrong." He wheeled closer. "But what they don't understand is that weakness can be strength. You make me more dangerous, not less." "How?" "Because now I have something to lose. And a man with something to lose will burn the world down to protect it." The words should have scared her. Instead, they made her feel safe, protected, valued. "Then let's make sure no one tests you," she said. Naledi stopped being just the maid, stopped being just the woman who made Dong-hyun feel. She started observing his business. She sat in on meetings, silent, invisible, serving tea while men in expensive suits discussed territory and money laundering and shipments. Dong-hyun pretended not to control. She learned names, faces, who deferred to Dong-hyun and who challenged him with barely concealed contempt. She learned the hierarchy, the power structure, the weaknesses, and she started noticing things Dong-hyun missed. "The man in the gray suit," she said one night after a particularly tense meeting. "He was lying." "About what?" "About the shipment from Busan. He said it arrived on Thursday, but you got the manifest Wednesday. I saw it on your desk." Dong-hyun went still. "You're sure?" "Positive. Which means either he's skimming product or he's working with someone who is." He stared at her. "How did you catch that?" "I pay attention. You taught me that." She met his eyes. You want me to dig deeper?" "You're not an operative, Naledi." "No, I'm something better. I'm invisible. They look right through me because I'm the black woman pouring tea. Let me use that." Dong-hyun considered this. "It's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous." "Fair point." He nodded slowly. "All right. But you report everything to me, and if anything feels wrong, you pull back immediately. Deal." That was the moment Naledi Jenkins stopped being a victim and started becoming a weapon. Over the next week, Naledi became Dong-hyun's secret eyes. She learned to move through his organization like a ghost, refilling drinks, clearing plates, always there, never noticed. She overheard conversations not meant for her. A lieutenant complaining about Dong Hyun's soft leadership. Another discussing moving operations when the cripple finally steps down. A third talking about a shipment that didn't match the books. She reported everything to Dong Hyun. His response was surgical, quiet, ruthless. The lieutenant who complained disappeared. The one discussing his leadership found his own operations raided and his assets frozen. The one skimming product woke up to federal agents at his door. Dong Hyun never said how he'd done it, but Naledi knew the pieces connected back to information she'd gathered. "You're terrifyingly good at this," he said one evening. "I had good teachers. Foster care teaches you to read people, to know who's dangerous and who's just loud. And which am I? Both, and neither." She curled into his side, their nightly position now, comfortable and familiar. "You're dangerous when you need to be, but you're not cruel. There's a difference. I've done cruel things, Naledi. To protect yourself and the people you love, that's not the same as cruelty for its own sake." She looked up at him. "Devon was cruel. He hurt me because it made him feel powerful. You hurt people because they're threats. I can live with the second. I never could with the first." Dong Hyun kissed her forehead. "You see the best in me. I see all of you. I just choose to love the whole picture." The word, love, hung between them. Neither acknowledged it, but it settled into their bones, quiet and certain. Dong Hyun stood without assistance for 5 minutes straight. It happened during a therapy session. Naledi was spotting him at the parallel bars when suddenly he let go. Just stood there, knees locked, to wait on his own legs. "Dong Hyun, don't touch me. Let me feel this." She stepped back, hands ready to catch him, heart in her throat. He stood for 1 minute, 2, 3. His legs shook, sweat beaded his forehead, but he didn't fall. At 5 minutes, he gripped the bars again, lowering himself carefully back to his wheelchair. "I did it," he whispered. "I fucking did it." Naledi laughed, tears streaming down her face. "You did it. Because of you." "No, because of you. I just gave you a reason." He pulled her close, kissing her hard. Same thing. That night they celebrated. Real celebration. A bottle of wine, takeout from his favorite restaurant, laughter that echoed through the penthouse like it hadn't in years. "What's next?" Naledi asked. "Walking. Real walking. Not just standing. If I can get my legs strong enough. I might be able to use a cane instead of the chair." "How long?" "Months. Maybe a year. But for the first time in 15 years, I have a goal." He took her hand. "And I have you. Always," she promised. She meant it. The next attack came differently. Naledi was shopping in Gangnam, escorted by 2 of Dong Hyun's security, as required, when a car jumped the curb. 1 second she was walking. The next, strong hands shoved her sideways. She hit the ground hard as the car roared past, close enough to feel the heat of its engine. Her security hauled her up immediately. "Are you hurt?" "No, what?" "That was deliberate." The lead guard spoke rapidly into his radio in Korean. "They tried to hit you." The car was gone. Disappeared into Seoul's traffic like smoke. By the time they got her back to the penthouse, the Dong Hyun was incandescent with rage. "Who?" he bit out. "Who tried to kill her?" "We're working on it, boss. The car had fake plates, but there were cameras." "I don't care about cameras. I want names. I want blood. And I want it now." Taeyang left quickly. Dong Hyun turned to Naledi. She was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting hard. He wheeled to her immediately, pulled her into his lap despite the awkwardness. "You're okay. You're safe. I have you." "They tried to run me down," she whispered. "I know. And I'm going to find out who and make them regret being born." "Why me? What did I do?" "You exist. You matter to me. In my world, that's enough." He held her tighter. "I'm sorry, Naledi. I should have protected you better. You did protect me. Your guards saved my life. Barely." She pulled back to look at him. "Dong Hyun, I'm not leaving. You know that, right? This doesn't change anything." "It should. You should run far away from me and never look back." "Too bad. You're stuck with me." She kissed him fiercely. "We're partners, remember?" "Partners," he echoed, but his eyes were dark with worry. It took Taeyang 3 days to identify the driver. "Low-level muscle from the Kang brothers organization," he reported. "They hired him to scare her, specifically her. They knew who she was and what she means to you." "The Kang brothers." Dong Hyun's voice went flat. "Dangerous. They think they can target mine? Boss, they're testing you. Seeing if your attachment makes you weak, then let's show them exactly how weak I am." He looked at Naledi. "You want to see what real retaliation looks like?" She nodded. "Yes? Then watch and learn." What followed was a masterclass in controlled violence. Dong Hyun didn't kill the Kang brothers. That would be too quick. Instead, he dismantled everything they'd built, their businesses raided by authorities who suddenly developed aggressive interest in tax evasion, their supply lines cut, their protection evaporating as Dong Hyun called in every favor he had. Within a week, the Kang brothers were ruined. Within 2, they were begging for mercy. Dong Hyun gave them none. He invited them to his penthouse, a summons they couldn't refuse, and made them kneel before his wheelchair. Naledi watched from the doorway, silent and still. You tried to kill her, Dong Hyun said quietly, dangerously. Explain why I shouldn't do the same to you. We didn't. It was a warning. A warning. You tried to run down the woman I love and called it a warning. His voice dropped to ice. Let me give you a warning in return. If anyone in this city so much as looks at her wrong, I will know, and I will respond. Not with warnings, with endings. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Good. Now get out of my city. You have 24 hours before I change my mind about letting you live. They ran. After they left, Dong Hyun wheeled to where Naledi stood. Did you see? I saw. That retaliation against your old boss? It showed me you're real. Now let's think smarter. Her voice echoed what she'd seen. You protected me, brutally, completely. I always will. She knelt beside his wheelchair, taking his hands. I know, and I love you for it. The words, finally spoken aloud, hung between them. You love me, Dong Hyun repeated slowly. I do. Is that a problem? The biggest one I've ever had. He cupped her face. Because I love you too. And love in my world gets people killed. Then we'll be smarter than everyone else, deadlier. Better. She kissed him. We're already halfway there. He kissed her back deeper, kneading. God, Naledi, what have you done to me? Woken you up, just like you woke me. That night they made love for the first time. It was slow, careful. Dong Hyun still couldn't feel everything, but he could feel enough. And what he couldn't feel physically, he felt emotionally. The intimacy of her trust, her body, her gasps against his neck, as he used his hands to bring her pleasure. I can feel you, he whispered afterward, both of them tangled in his sheets. When you're close like this, Dia, I swear I can feel everything. Then I'll stay close forever. Promise me. I promise. But promises in their world were fragile things, and the biggest threat was still coming. The car attack creates urgency and fear. The retaliation scene gives viewers justice satisfaction. The love confession and first intimate scene creates emotional investment. Viewers will comment on whether Dong Hyun's retaliation was justified, whether the romance feels earned, and what they think happens next. Team dynamics deepen. Are you team run away or team stay and fight? For 3 perfect weeks they existed in a bubble. Dong Hyun walked